So, question one is: in what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? I have obviously made the music video, and the music video genre that I picked was indie pop. And a few of my inspirations in regards to real life products were people like Tom Odell, kind of Ed Sheeran at the beginning, even though it's kind of more acousticy, but again, that's kind of more Georgina. Um, and they were kind of my two main ones, and I used a lot of their conventions within my own music video. And overall, just from the beginning, I do think that I more used the conventions of indie pop or indie music. And the reason I did this was because I think that a lot of music videos now are almost developing indie music, and I wanted to do a more classic video just because I think it is almost different in the fact that it's classically indie as opposed to kind of other indie genres, because I think a big thing about indie music is the concept of new artists are often very indie, and they often kind of have a very specific audience, and they usually like almost a cult following as opposed to kind of big pop bands, or obviously Ed Sheeran has turned into something very different to what he originally was, if that makes any sense. So obviously he began kind of very acousticy and began very kind of homegrown, and then became almost a big pop star. So I wanted to do something classically indie because I did think it would be different, and I did because I was using an actual artist. That homegrown idea was still a really big thing for me, because I did want to emphasise the fact, number one, that she's a new artist. I use that throughout all of my products, and it was kind of the main focal point for me was that she was new. So it obviously was called Who, and there's lots of like the hidden face with the mask and everything to add into that concept. So the narrative of my music video is the idea that she really wants to be a musician, and she really wants to travel, but she doesn't really feel comfortable within herself, which is why the mask is like a representation of her outer feelings. And the mask is just a massive metaphor. It's not meant to be there. It is just meant to be kind of a visual representation of her anxiety. And obviously by the end, she kind of realises that she should be who she is, with the encouragement of her friends. And it kind of links in with the narrative closure idea that Cook talked about, because in the end she does manage to take off the mask and everything, though in some ways it's kind of against that concept, because Cook was really talking about kind of a cause and effect thing, and I don't feel like we ever really understand the cause of her anxiety necessarily. And I don't think there's necessarily a cause. I guess the friendship, her friends are a cause of her kind of taking off the mask, because we obviously see the phone and it says, please come up and jam and everything, but it still relies on her confidence to take off the mask. So I don't think there's a necessary cause that does it. Overall, we never really find out the cause of her anxiety. I think it can be assumed in a lot of different ways, which obviously goes to the very personal nature that is often with these indie videos. Like I said, it's the convention of indie videos, is the personal nature of them. And I feel like I definitely have that. And I feel like you can put a lot of your own ideas onto it, and you very much, as an audience, I kind of agree with what Roland Barthes said, and he was kind of talking about the concept of the audience's opinion, and the message that they put onto the music video is more important than my ideas as a producer. And I think that is definitely true, especially with indie music, again, using those conventions. So with Tom Odell and, for example, Another Love, both videos of that, and with One Crowd, actually, it's really about your opinion, considering the story. So obviously with Another Love, the video with him just in the chair with all the lights around him, it's very much because obviously the girl leaves him, and although the lyrics are kind of saying it's because he was still in love with another person, you still can put your meaning onto that, whether she was kind of right to go or wrong to go, or why she was leaving, or was she leaving forever, or was she kind of staying. And there's lots of kind of signifiers kind of put into the background, so lots of like destruction. Or with Another Love, where he was trying to find the missing girl, and the missing girl was right behind him, and kind of that idea. It's very much your own meaning that you need to be putting onto it, which kind of bar stools back, and I think that is very true with the narrative of my music video and the personal meaning of it, which as an indie audience you do want to be able to get out of it. I think that you really do need to use your own opinions and cultural beliefs to fully understand the video. So it's kind of rejecting that hypodermic needle theory. It's all very much kind of, you have to put your own meaning into it, because that's almost the whole concept of indie, is your own personal feelings towards it. So obviously I feel like the camera work was very low-key and relaxed, which is another key idea of indie. And even though obviously it was quite a big meaning-wise and quite deep and everything, camera-wise I did want it to be kind of almost relaxed and kind of floaty and slow, and I think you can definitely see that in lots of the walking shots, and obviously there's lots of fast-paced bits as well. I used a lot of running imagery throughout my music video. There's lots of bits where she runs, and I think that, again, as an audience you can put your own meaning to that, but I think for me, when I was doing the running, it's always lots of panic and almost this concept is she's still running away from herself because she is trying to fit to these ideals of other people. So obviously she's running in school because she's late, and obviously you have to kind of obey by the school rules because otherwise you'll get detention or you'll get in trouble for it, and but that doesn't mean you can't be yourself along the way. So I think lots of that running was running away from herself, and then the general acceptance, so it's lots of that running imagery was for that idea, but I did still want it to be very kind of low-key, soft in colour. So if we compare it to something like A-Team, obviously that's in black and white, so it's all very kind of soft in colour and different focuses. And Tom Odell isn't necessarily soft in colour with Another Love, with the big like red and blue and green lights that kind of flash around in his music videos. They're not necessarily soft, but they're not bright, they're very dark colours, and that is something I wanted to put into my own music video. So she wears like black, and it's like the brightest thing on her is the mask, but even the mask isn't very bright. It's a very like deep, almost brown gold and very, very soft blue, and it kind of adding into that colour concept, and that kind of doesn't, because obviously Saussure talked about signifiers and everything has meaning, and obviously he means like every object in the music video has meaning. So the fact that she is wearing a mask is obviously a massive signifier of her anxiety, and kind of when she's in school and everything being perfectly and like symmetrical when in the jump cut scene, I was kind of put everything in colour order and everything was very much in place, and I had her kind of in the centre for the jump cuts, and part of that was to kind of represent how she felt so out of place, even though because she's in this perfect almost bubble, and then she is just completely out of place within that bubble. And obviously because she's moving around and everything, she isn't perfect. She doesn't stay still in the middle, like perfectly symmetrical. She is moving around and everything, so she is almost like disrupting the perfect nature of the music video. And colour as well, even though it's a signifier, it's not a like object signifier. It's kind of a general signifier, kind of an iconic signifier, because obviously colours mean a lot of things. So we're using a lot of black, and except for in the performing scenes, and that was the point, is that the performing scenes were very bright in colour and very yellow, and she looks very glamorous and everything, and that kind of is meant to signify her being her proper, true, happy self when she's performing. Because the idea of the story is that the Georgina we see performing could easily be the artist, or could easily be her, like the girl in the future, or she's remembering, or it's, she could be really involved in the story, or she could be away from it. And that kind of adds in with kind of the concept of Richard Dyer saying, stars being produced, and we are combining their real selves on the screen as compared to their real selves in real life. But the main thing about indie music is that you are completely rejecting that concept. And even you're rejecting it and you're agreeing with it. Because obviously with indie music, because it's so personal to the artist and to the audience, you have to put some of your real self in there. And that was a big thing for me, was putting part of Georgina's real self into the music video, which is why I had the performance bits where she was being the artist. And I do think that, like many girls, Georgina has had anxiety. And it was kind of representing, especially about her music, because obviously wanting to be a artist, a established artist, you do worry about your music and how it's going to be, kind of how the audience is going to take it. And I did want to kind of put that in there because of the personal message, but I don't think I was producing something for purely the audience. I just think I was almost taking what was already there and showing it to the world, as opposed to creating something there to show it, to have the audience take it. It was very natural, and it's all about indie. The main convention of indie music is that personal nature, and I didn't want to do that. It's the same with the advert, that very, again, with the mask on, she's not looking at the camera, so there's not direct address. So you could say, again, it's not a personal thing, but I feel like the pose she's in very much invites you as the audience to want to be more personal with her and discover who she is and everything. And the concept of the album is that, with the digipack, with the song titles on the back, who is Georgina? These songs are Georgina. It is Georgina. It is all of Georgina's fears and all of Georgina's thoughts and everything on a page. And it's a message. And that was one of the really big things for me, is to make sure it was absolutely kind of personal. Because it's such a big convention of indie music. And I think if I hadn't used that, I wouldn't have got my idea of wanting to have that conventional indie video. And going back to kind of original indie music that I wanted to do. Because if we look at Tom Odell's Wrong Crowd, or if we look at Ed Sheeran's Sing, as opposed to Drunk or A-Team, there's such a difference there. And I think because indie's so about the new, and when you're established, you're not that anymore, so you have to find something else. And I think that we are kind of almost missing out on things because pop is what people will listen to. Pop is one of the most, I feel like everyone likes at least a pop song, or has, there'll be one, even if you don't admit it, there'll be kind of one. So I did want to create that very typical indie genre music video and digipack and everything. And again, with that homegrown artistry, you see on the front of the digipack, she's literally busking. And again, very Ed Sheeran, because that's how he began, is by busking, and that's how he got found. And it's that personal thing of putting yourself out there, because she literally has to put herself out there when she's busking, and that kind of concept. So obviously, like I've already said, when it comes to indie music, it's all very conceptual. So in the editing of my music video, although there's narrative, I did have that conceptual nature with the mask. And I did want to add in slight kind of hints of that conceptual nature in other bits. And I think the main place you can really see that is where she's running towards the camera and then it flips and then she's upside down. And again, it's that concept of confusion that I think she feels, and generally kind of really feeling how she feels, and her world is upside down just because she is so lost. And again, with that running thing, she's so lost and so confused and everything. It was just meant to really kind of show that, through that, because I feel like it is almost really random when you look at the whole of the video together. It's kind of a really random scene. It's like, oh, okay, we're upside down. This never happens again. Same with perhaps the running a bit. It's all meant to be very confusing. The same when she's finishing the library and she's having to shove all these books around, and it's meant to be kind of very manic. And yes, because she's late. Again, that underlying theme of confusion and discovery and not feeling right in yourself. Again, to add to that personal nature, of the music video. And I do think that it, can come across like that. And poster and digipack wise, obviously I think that they really apply to the conventions, because if I want to make my tasks all fit together in regards to my genre, then I need to make sure that they're all classic. Because with a more established artist, obviously you can just put their face up and a date, and people will immediately go like, oh, okay, it's Beyonce's new album. Okay, that's fine. You can't do that with a new artist, because they'll be like, well, who's that? What does that date mean? And yeah, okay, some people will be interested, and we'll try and look them up, and we'll be kind of brought in by that concept. But not everyone will, because we are kind of almost scared of the unknown. Maybe not with music, sphere might be the wrong word, but the concept of not wanting to listen to something unless you're sure you're going to like it is kind of, I think, quite prominent. And so I did have to make it very conventional. So I did have kind of her on the rule of thirds for visual interest, and I tried to make it very clear and with the kind of information, and it's all got a visual hierarchy, so it's her name, then the album name, then the album information. And so it's very typical of that posters, because it needs to be, because you're trying to advertise someone. So there's no point, for me particularly, there was no point in completely changing up every convention regarding adverts ever, because, you know, there'd be no point. You know, it wouldn't work for what it was trying to do, is what I'm trying to say. And then with the digipack, again, very kind of giving you the information that you need, very typical. You know, you have the thank you message inside to kind of show that she's this big artist, which is really for like the fans who are interested in that kind of thing, and the pictures on the inside, and the mask is still there, and you have kind of the track listings and a quote inside, which I don't know how many people do, but then I can't really think of how many people actually use digipacks anymore, but that's part of kind of that retro, bringing it back to classic concepts of having a digipack, and in trying to entice people to want to look at your digipack. So, you know, it's kind of very basic. I do like the quote, though. I think the quote, again, is linking into that personal idea, because the quote is meant to be kind of almost inspirational for the audience and kind of linking in to that concept very highly. So overall, as I said at the beginning, I did want my music video to be highly classic in its indie conventions. I didn't really develop any of the indie conventions, and I didn't really challenge any of them, because I really feel like I wanted to make this classic for a reason, being that I think it would be more interesting to actually have a classic video than it would be to have a normal one. And that's one of the beautiful things about indie, is that yes, they have conventions, but at the same time, because it's a very specific and interesting genre that you don't really see as much, you can really shape it to how you want it to be. So I guess in some ways I did develop indie music for my own personal tastes, but that in itself is an indie convention, so I didn't really adapt anything. But, you know, it was very conceptual with the mask, and obviously my editing, I kind of had to edit that very specific scene with the camera flipping, because obviously the camera couldn't just roll, because it's a camera, I couldn't break it. So I needed to edit it to make it look like it was moving. So I had to take shots of the sky, and I had to kind of move myself and everything and focus it. And I did want things to be manic and kind of very almost fast-paced, but also very relaxed at the same time. Because I feel like everything kind of flows and works well together, but it's still almost kind of fast-paced, because there's lots of running to, as I've already said, that add into conceptually. And, you know, there's the soft colours there, apart from when she's performing, to show the brightness and the light that comes from within her from performing, that kind of thing. And it is very personal. That's the big part of my music video that has to be remembered, is that this is a really personal concept. And that is the biggest part of indie music. As I've already said, it has to be personal, because I think that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to attract your audience and going to be like, listen, this is me. If you feel these fears too, I want you to understand that you don't feel alone. And like I've already said, I think that was very much from Georgina. Georgina did become one of my inspirations, being the artist of the song, being able to help me throughout the process. I feel like she did have a really big impact on where the song went. And then as a producer, with it being my idea and everything, this is my baby, almost. I know that everyone's music video is their baby, but this is my anxieties represented on screen. And I was lucky enough to be able to find a song that reflected that, because I did want this to be a message of it does get better. And some ways for me, as an audience, because I like Georgina's music, I am a fan of Georgina. So it's kind of like I almost was tailoring it to me as an audience, and also trying to show my own fears on screen. And I do think I worked that effectively, and I think that the best way to do that was with the classic indie genre, and I think I did do that with the conventions. So thank you for listening.